Hey, welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy tonight's stories. Here we venture into the dark web, peeling back layers of mystery and terror to reveal tales that were never meant to be told. Leave a like and subscribe for more dark web scary stories. I found on the dark web what the government has been hiding beneath Antarctica. Alright, so I know how this sounds. Another I found something insane on the dark web story, right? But I swear to you, this isn't one of those fake, exaggerated posts. I wish it was. I wish I never went digging where I didn't belong, because now I think someone is watching me. Let me back up. I'm not some hacker or cyber genius. I'm just a regular guy with a bad habit of curiosity. You know when you fall into one of those YouTube rabbit holes at 3 a.m. watching conspiracy videos about missing people, government cover-ups, and secret experiments? Yeah, that's me. But instead of just watching, I started wondering, what if I actually went looking for answers? That's how I ended up messing around on the dark web. At first, it was nothing crazy, just weird forums, sketchy marketplaces, and a ton of scams. But then I found something different. A link in a forum post with no replies. The title just said, "If you want the truth about Antarctica, download this before they delete it." Now I know what you're thinking. Obvious scam, right? Some dumb prank or a virus? But the post wasn't new. It had been up for months, untouched. Something about that freaked me out. I don't know why, but it felt real. Like whoever posted it knew no one would find it. Or maybe no one who did stuck around to talk about it. I downloaded the file. It was a simple .text document called Do Not Share. Just a few kilobytes, no images, no videos, just words. But what I read inside, I shouldn't have seen it, I know that now. The document was a transcript, a conversation between what seemed to be two government officials, no names, just Agent A and Agent B, and they were talking about something under Antarctica, not on Antarctica, under it. At first, it sounded like they were talking about a secret base. Military stuff, high security, classified information. That's not even surprising. We all know governments hide things from us. But then it got weird. They weren't just talking about a base. They were talking about something alive. Agent A kept pressing for details, saying things like, how long have they been active? Do they know we're monitoring them? What happens if containment fails? But Agent B, his responses were vague. Like he was scared to even write it down. We've only deciphered part of their language. They're aware. They're watching us too. Containment is not an option. It's a delay. And then the last message in the transcript. The one that made my stomach drop. If they wake up, we won't be able to stop them. This planet was never ours to begin with. I closed the file. My hands were shaking. This wasn't some dumb creepypasta. This wasn't some conspiracy theory nonsense. This felt real. Too real. And then my computer screen glitched, just for a second, like static. Then my mouse stopped working. My browser closed on its own, and before I could even react, a new window opened. It was a live camera feed, a dark room, a desk, a laptop, and a person. Sitting there, watching me. Whoever they were wearing a black hoodie, face completely hidden in the shadows. They tilted their heads slightly like they knew I was looking back at them. And then they typed something. One sentence, right there on the screen in real time. You shouldn't have opened that file. I swear to you, I've never been more scared in my entire life. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. You shouldn't have opened that file. Those words stared back at me, typed out by some faceless person watching me through my own computer. My first instinct was to yank the power cord out of the wall, but before I could even move, they typed something else. Don't turn it off. That won't help you. I felt my blood go cold. I don't know how long I sat there. Frozen? My mind was racing with questions. Who the hell was this? How did they find me? I didn't even reply. I didn't dare. I just watched. as the cursor blinked, like they were waiting for me to say something. And then the screen changed again. The chat window disappeared, replaced by a grainy black and white surveillance feed. The footage was shaky, distorted, like it was being streamed from some kind of security camera. At first, I couldn't tell what I was looking at. The image was dark, covered in static. Then I saw movement. It was a hallway. Long, metallic, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. A place that looked way too industrial to be public. The walls were smooth, cold, sterile. No signs, no doors, just a narrow tunnel that seemed to go on forever. And then something moved at the far end. A figure. At first I thought it was a person. The way it walked, slow and deliberate, almost human. But as it got closer, I realized it wasn't. It was too tall, too thin. Its limbs were just slightly too long, its posture slightly too unnatural. And the way it moved, it was like it was aware of the camera but didn't care. Then the static got worse, and before I could make out its face, the feed cut off. Back to the black screen, back to the chat window. Another message appeared. You need to forget what you saw. I felt like I was going to be sick. My hands were sweaty, my breathing uneven. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to just turn off my computer, to throw it out the window and pretend none of this ever happened. But I couldn't, because I knew deep down this wasn't just some elaborate prank. I tried to type back, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. Who are you? No response. I tried again. What was that thing? Nothing. And then my speakers crackled. Not a message, not a sound notification. A voice, low, distorted, like something was trying to speak through static. I couldn't make out the words at first, but as the noise cleared, I heard it. They know you saw them. I slammed my laptop shut. That was it. I was done. I was so done. I unplugged my Wi-Fi router, turned off my phone, and just sat there in the dark, trying to calm my breathing. My mind was screaming at me to leave my apartment, to go outside, to be anywhere but here. And then someone knocked on my door. Not a friendly knock. A slow, deliberate, heavy knock. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Another knock. Louder. I grabbed my phone, but my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I turned it on, went straight to the camera app, and pointed it at my door, hoping to see nothing. But through the tiny gap at the bottom of the door, I saw a shadow. Someone, or something, was standing on the other side, waiting. And then, without warning, my phone screen glitched, just like my laptop had. The image blurred, distorted, static, crawling across the screen. And then the camera app crashed. The knocking stopped. Silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening, waiting. But whoever had been there was gone. At least I thought they were. Until I got a new message, not on my laptop, not on my phone, but on a piece of paper, slid under my door. I picked it up, my breath hitching in my throat. In simple, blocky handwriting, just 6 words. You were never supposed to see. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my couch, gripping the note in my hands, my eyes locked on my front door. I kept telling myself it was a prank. Maybe one of my friends somehow found out what I was doing and decided to mess with me. Maybe the dark web file was just some elaborate internet hoax. Maybe I was just overreacting. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true, because when I finally got the courage to check the peephole, there were wet footprints leading away from my door, not normal footprints, bare feet, like someone or something had been standing there, dripping. And I live on the 3rd floor. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay here. I grabbed my keys, threw on a hoodie, and left my apartment as fast as I could. It was almost 3 a.m. and the streets were dead silent. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see that shadowy figure from the surveillance feed, or worse, whoever had knocked on my door. I had no plan, no destination. I just walked, hoping that moving would make me feel safer. It didn't. After about 20 minutes, I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking as I tried to type a message to my friend Kyle. "Dude, I need to crash at your place. Something weird is going on." Before I could hit send, my phone glitched again. The screen flickered, the keyboard vanished, and suddenly a new text appeared. Not from Kyle. From an unknown number. Going somewhere? I stopped walking. My heart felt like it had just dropped into my stomach. I looked around. The street was empty. No cars, no people, just the faint hum of a street lamp buzzing overhead. Then another text came through. "Go home, act normal, this is your only warning." I stared at the message, my pulse pounding in my ears. My breathing was shallow. I don't know why, but I did something stupid. I texted back. "Who are you?" 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. I held my breath. And then the response. "You already know." I turned my phone off and kept walking. I needed to get somewhere safe. Kyle's place was a few blocks away, and he was the only person I trusted enough to believe me. When I finally got to his apartment, I rang his buzzer over and over until he answered. His voice came through the speaker, groggy and annoyed. "Dude, what the hell? It's almost 4 in the morning." I exhaled, relieved. He was okay. "Kyle, I swear to God, just let me up. I'll explain everything when I get inside." A long pause. Then the buzzer sounded, and I pushed through the door. I practically sprinted up the stairs, heart still racing. When I got to his apartment, he was standing in the doorway rubbing his eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost, bro." He stepped aside to let me in. "You want to tell me why you're losing your mind at—" Then he stopped, stared at his phone. His face went pale. "What the fu—" he muttered under his breath. I swallowed hard. What is it?" He turned his phone around and showed me the screen, a text message from my number. "Don't let him in." We just stood there in silence, the tension in the air so thick I could barely breathe. Then Kyle looked up at me. His expression wasn't just confusion anymore. It was fear. "Dude, if you're standing right here, then who the fuck's just texted me?" I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but before I could, we both heard it. A knock. Not on Kyle's door, on his window. We're on the 6th floor. Kyle's face went pale. He turned slowly, his hands trembling, as he reached for the blinds. "Don't," I whispered. But he did anyway. He pulled the blinds back just an inch, just enough to see outside. And then he screamed. I didn't see what was there. I didn't want to. But I saw Kyle's face twist in absolute terror before he stumbled backward, knocking over a chair in the process. No. What the fuck is that? I grabbed him by the shoulders. "We need to go now." But then his phone buzzed again. Another message from my number. Too late. And then his lights went out. The second Kyle's lights went out, my stomach dropped. Total darkness, not just in his apartment, the whole building, maybe even the entire block. I grabbed my phone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. Kyle was hyperventilating next to me, still shaking from whatever the hell he saw at the window. No, this isn't happening, this isn't fucking happening, he kept whispering. I reached out, gripping his arm. "Kyle, listen to me, we need to get out of here, now." But then in the pitch-black silence we heard something. The door handle. It was turning. I felt Kyle's whole body stiffen. Neither of us moved. The door was locked. It had to be. But the handle kept twisting slowly, methodically. Then The knocking started, not frantic, not rushed, just a slow, steady tap, tap, tap. Kyle grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. "Dude, what the fuck is happening?" he whispered. I didn't answer because I had no idea. We backed away from the door as the knocking grew louder. Whoever, or whatever, was out there wasn't trying to break in. They wanted us to open the door ourselves. And then my phone vibrated. A message from that same unknown number. I hesitated, my breath shaky, before looking down at the screen. "Open the door." I nearly dropped the phone. "What does it say?" Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the knocking stopped. Silence, and then the door unlocked. The sound of the deadbolt sliding open on its own made my entire body go cold. Kyle and I just stood there, frozen, staring at the door. Neither of us touched it. Neither of us moved. And yet, the handle started turning again. Kyle lost it. He bolted straight for the kitchen and grabbed the first thing he saw. A knife. "Fuck this," he muttered, his voice shaking. "If someone comes in here, I swear to God." But before he could finish, the door creaked open, only an inch, enough for us to see the hallway outside, and enough for something to see us. Kyle lifted the knife. I held my breath. The gap in the door was pitch black. No light from the hallway, no sound, just an open sliver of nothing. And then a hand, not a normal hand, pale, too many joints, fingers too long, moving too slow. It reached through the gap, fingertips stretching toward the inside of the apartment. Kyle reacted first. He slammed the door shut, locked it, stepped back, breathing hard. "Tell me you saw that," he gasped. "Tell me I'm not losing my fuck to your mind." I nodded, too afraid to speak. Then, from the other side of the door, the knocking started again, louder this time, harder. And then a voice. A low, distorted whisper that made my skin crawl. "We see you." That was it. We weren't staying here. I grabbed Kyle's arm, yanked him toward the fire escape, and we climbed down as fast as we could. Neither of us looked back. I don't think I could have handled what I might have seen. We ran, down the street, around the block, anywhere but there. The whole neighborhood was still dark. No streetlights, no headlights, just the eerie silence of a city that had suddenly stopped. We didn't stop until we reached an all-night diner, the only place still lit up. The second we stepped inside, the warmth and light hit us like a wave. It felt unreal, too normal. The waitress gave us a weird look. "You boys okay?" Neither of us answered. We just found a booth, sat down, and tried to catch our breath. Kyle was still gripping the knife. His hands were shaking. "What the fuck is going on?" he whispered. I didn't know. I still don't. But then, my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look. Almost. But I did. And my stomach dropped when I saw the message. Not from the unknown number, not from my own number, but from Kyle's, and all it said was, "You left the door open." I felt sick. Kyle was sitting right across from me, still gripping the knife, his hands shaking, but somehow I had just gotten a message from his number. I didn't say anything at first. I just turned the phone around and showed him the screen. His face went pale. "That's not me," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "I know." The diner suddenly felt too quiet, too normal. The buzzing neon lights, the distant sound of a radio playing some old song, the clatter of plates from the kitchen. Like the rest of the world was moving on, completely unaware that something was after us. Then, another message. From Kyle's number. "Turn around." Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared to turn around. But we didn't have to, because I saw it in the reflection of the diner window, a figure, standing outside just beyond the glass, tall, too tall, its head slightly tilted like it was studying us. The streetlights were still out, and the only reason I could see it at all was because of the dim red glow from the diner's neon open sign. And then it took a step forward. I grabbed Kyle's wrist. "We need to go, right now." "Where the fuck are we supposed to go?" he hissed. I didn't know, but we couldn't stay here. I pulled out a couple of crumpled bills from my pocket and threw them on the table. The waitress gave us a weird look as we stood up. "You boys okay?" Neither of us answered. I glanced back at the window. The figure was gone. That somehow made it worse. We stepped outside and the air felt different. Thicker, heavier. The streets were still dead. It was like the entire city had been swallowed by the dark. Kyle grabbed my arm. "Dude, stop, we need a plan." I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. "We need to get somewhere public, somewhere with people, a police station." My phone rang. The sound made both of us jump. It echoed through the empty street, way too loud. I pulled it out of my pocket. Unknown caller. Kyle shook his head. "Don't answer that." I answered it. The second I put it to my ear, I heard breathing, slow, shallow, like something was just listening. Then a whisper. "We're already here." I spun around, nothing, then static, and then a new voice, familiar, my own. "You should have never opened that file." I felt my stomach drop. I pulled the phone away from my ear, just in time for the call to cut off. Kyle was staring at me. "Dude, what did they say?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because at that moment, every light in the city came back on. Streetlights, headlights, apartment windows. Like someone had flipped a switch. And just like that, it was over. No figures, no static. Just an empty street bathed in artificial light. Kyle exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ, man, was this all in our heads?" I didn't know how to answer, because when I looked down at my phone, I saw one last notification, a file, the same one from the dark web, downloaded again. Except this time, I never opened it. That was a week ago. Kyle left the city, packed up his stuff and moved to a different state. I don't blame him. I tried to go back to my normal life. But things feel different now. Every time I check my phone, I expect to see another message. Every time I go to sleep, I expect to hear that slow, deliberate knock on my door. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear it. Tap, tap, tap. I don't think this is over. I don't think it'll ever be over. Because whatever I saw on that file, whatever the government has been hiding beneath Antarctica, it knows I saw it. And it's still watching. I discovered, on the dark web, a live stream from an underground alien lab. Alright, I know how this is going to sound. Trust me, if I were reading this, I'd probably call BS too, but I swear on everything, I didn't make this up. So, a little background. I've always been into weird internet rabbit holes, not like the creepy, illegal stuff, just the eerie, this shouldn't exist kind of content. You know those conspiracy forums where people talk about government experiments and deep web mysteries? Yeah, that's my jam. So, one night, I was on a Discord server with some like-minded folks when a guy, we'll call him X, dropped a Tor link and said, "VP, if you want to see something, the government would kill you for knowing. Click this." Now, normally, I wouldn't mess with that. I know better than to blindly click random dark web links, but curiosity, it's a hell of a drug. And something about the way X phrased it, like he was dead serious, made me hesitate for maybe 5 seconds before I copy-pasted it into the browser. The page that loaded was almost too simple. Just a black screen, a single embedded video, and a chat room below it. No title, no description, just a red dot in the corner of the video indicating it was live. I clicked play. At first, it looked like security cam footage, low quality, bluish-green tint, the kind of thing you'd see in a top-secret facility. The room in the video was wrong. It had this sterile, lifeless vibe, like a hospital, but way colder. Stainless steel walls, fluorescent lights that flickered just enough to be unsettling. And in the middle of the room, a glass containment chamber. I leaned closer. Inside the chamber was something big, way too big to be human. At first, I thought it was some kind of animal, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized it wasn't moving. Not like something sleeping or resting, it was just hanging there, limbs too long, torso unnaturally thin, skin a sickly grey-green, a humanoid shape I should have clicked off right then. I really should have. But then the chat caught my attention. There were only about a dozen people watching, all using weird usernames like Watcher1976 and Xeno Observer. They weren't just chatting casually, these people were discussing the thing in the tank like they knew what it was. Subject 32 is still showing minimal brain activity. It won't last the night. We need a fresh specimen. Have they started the vivisection yet? What the actual hell? Vivisection? Like cutting it open while it was still alive? I could feel my pulse in my throat. Either this was an elaborate ARG, or I had just stumbled onto something I was never supposed to see. But before I could decide what to do, the camera zoomed in, like someone on the other end knew we were watching and wanted us to see better. That's when the thing in the tank moved, not a normal sluggish movement. This thing's eyes snapped open, completely black, reflecting the dim light like glass. And its mouth. It didn't have lips, just a slit that suddenly stretched open in a way that made my stomach turn. It was mouthing something, but I didn't understand, until the speakers on my laptop crackled and a noise came through. It wasn't just a noise, it was words, a whisper, garbled, layered, like 1,000 voices speaking at once, and it said my name. I slammed my laptop shut so fast I nearly broke the screen. My heart was pounding out of my chest. There was no way in hell anyone on that stream could have known my name. I didn't use my real info. I was on a VPN. My mic was off. And yet, it knew me. I sat there in the dark for what felt like forever, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence, that I misheard, that I was just freaking myself out. But then, my phone buzzed. One new notification. No caller ID. The message was just 3 words. Don't watch again. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My brain kept replaying that moment. The thing in the tank, its mouth stretching open, the way it whispered my name. And then the message. Don't watch again. I stared at my phone for hours, waiting for another text, a call, something. But nothing else came. Eventually I convinced myself it was some elaborate prank. Maybe X was screwing with me. Maybe the stream was just some insane deep web horror project. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I kept my laptop closed the entire next day. It just sat there on my desk like a bomb waiting to go off. I didn't even want to touch it. But by nightfall, curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I'd just check. Not the stream, just the site. Just to see if it was still there. I opened Tor, hands shaking. The page was gone. Error 404, like it had never existed. That should have been the end of it. I should have been relieved, but instead, my stomach sank. Sites don't just vanish like that overnight, at least not without a reason. Someone took it down, or someone didn't want me finding it again. I clicked out and went to Discord. X hadn't posted anything else. I messaged him. Me. Yo, what was that stream last night? Me. Site's down. You got another link? Me. Dude. No response. I checked his profile. His name was still there. But his messages? Gone. Like he had never sent anything at all. That's when I got this sinking feeling, like I had stepped into something way bigger than I realized. I didn't even have time to process it before my lights flickered. Not the whole building, just my apartment. And then a knock at my door. I froze. It wasn't a normal knock. It was slow, rhythmic. 3 soft taps, a pause, then 3 more. Like whoever was on the other side was waiting, listening. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My peephole was covered. I always kept it that way. Paranoia, I guess. But now, I wished I could see who was out there. The knocking stopped. I waited. 5 minutes? 10? Nothing. When I finally got the nerve to check the hallway, it was empty. No footsteps, no doors closing, just silence. But when I turned back to go inside, I saw it. A small black device on the floor in front of my door, like a USB, but not one I had ever seen before. And attached to it, a note, 4 words, handwritten. Watch before it's gone. I should have thrown it away. I should have left it there in the hallway, locked my door, and forgotten any of this ever happened. But instead, I picked up the black USB like an idiot. My hands were sweating so bad I almost dropped it. The handwriting on the note looked rushed, almost frantic. Watch before it's gone. I went back inside, locking the door behind me, twice. My entire body was telling me, don't do this, but my brain was screaming, you need to know. I grabbed an old laptop, not my main one, just a junky, barely functioning laptop I kept for sketchy files. If this thing had a virus or spyware, I wasn't about to let it touch my actual setup. I plugged in the USB. At first, nothing happened. No pop-ups, no autoplay, just a single file, a video time-stamped from 2 nights ago. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the touchpad, but then I clicked. The screen flickered to life. At first, I thought it was the same footage from the dark web stream, a cold, sterile room, that same glass chamber. But something was different. The camera angle was new, closer. It wasn't security footage anymore. This was handheld. Someone was recording this in person. There were voices in the background, muffled but urgent. Scientists, maybe. Their words weren't clear, but I caught fragments. Losing containment. Wasn't supposed to wake up. We need to terminate. And then, movement. The containment chamber was empty. The thing from the stream? Gone. The camera jerked, panning to a doorway. The lights in the room flickered, casting these long, shifting shadows. And then, for just a second, I saw it. A shape. Not fully human, not fully anything. It was hunched, its limbs stretched too long, its skin a wet, unnatural grey. But what made my blood run cold, what made me actually push my chair back, was the eyes, not black anymore, not empty. They were glowing, a dull, sickly green, like something radioactive. And then, in a single, jerky movement, the thing twisted its head toward the camera. The screen glitched, audio cut out. The file corrupted itself before my eyes, freezing on a single, warped frame, the creature's open mouth, teeth too sharp, its neck bending at an impossible angle. And then static. I slammed the laptop shut. My breath was coming fast, too fast. My ears were ringing. I knew what I had just seen wasn't fake. It wasn't CGI. There was something real in that footage, something the government or some organization or someone was trying to keep hidden. And then my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my chair. Hands shaking, I picked it up. No caller ID, just another message. Stop watching. And then, right as I was about to put the phone down, a second message. It knows you saw. I didn't touch the laptop. I didn't touch my phone. I just sat there, my entire body locked up with fear. It knows you saw. That was the last message. No follow-up. No explanation, just those 4 words. And then my lights flickered again, not like before. This time it was worse. They cut out completely for a full 3 seconds, plunging my apartment into pitch-black silence. Then they flickered back, dim, weaker than before. Something was wrong. I forced myself to stand, moving slowly toward the window. My apartment overlooked the street, and usually there were at least some signs of life. Cars, people, the glow of streetlights. But now, everything outside was off. The streetlights were still on, but they were flickering, casting weird, jerky shadows along the pavement. No cars, no people. Just an empty street that looked like it had been frozen mid-moment, like the world outside wasn't real anymore. And then, a figure, standing beneath the street lamp directly across from my apartment, not moving, not even breathing, just watching. I couldn't see its face, couldn't tell if it was even human, but something about the way it stood, unnaturally still, sent every instinct in my body into overdrive. My heart was pounding. I slowly reached for the blinds, ready to close them, and then, in a single, unnatural motion, the figure twitched. Not like a person shifting their weight. It was fast, like a frame skip in a corrupted video. One moment, it was under the streetlight. The next, it was closer, still motionless, still watching. I stumbled back from the window, my breath coming in sharp gasps. My mind was screaming at me to run, to do something, but my body wasn't listening. Then my door handle moved. Not a knock, not a bang, just a slow, deliberate turn. I barely had time to react before my phone lit up again. Another message, no caller ID. It's outside. My stomach dropped. My legs finally listened to me, and I ran for the kitchen, grabbing the biggest knife I could find. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The door handle stopped moving. Silence. I held my breath. 5 seconds, 10. Then a single knock. Software. Almost polite. My phone buzzed again. Do not open. I wasn't planning on it. But whoever, whatever was outside seemed to have other ideas. Because the next thing I heard wasn't knocking. It was whispering. Right outside my door. Low, garbled, layered, like 1,000 voices overlapping, just like the thing in the tank. I gripped the knife tighter, every muscle in my body screaming to move, to hide, to do something. Then in a blink, the whispers stopped. I waited. The longest, most painful 30 seconds of my life. Then I forced myself to step forward. Slowly. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just an empty hallway. But I knew I wasn't safe. Not anymore. I didn't sleep. Even after the whispers stopped, after the door handle went still, after I checked the hallway and saw nothing, I knew it wasn't over. Something was still watching me. I could feel it. I sat on my couch, gripping the knife so hard my fingers went numb. Every little noise, a creak in the walls, the hum of my fridge, made my heart jump. My phone sat on the table in front of me, dark and silent, but I couldn't stop staring at it, waiting for another message. Hours passed. At some point I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember was waking up to static, not from my TV, from my laptop. It was open. I knew for a fact I had shut it. And on the screen, a live feed. It wasn't the dark web stream, it wasn't security footage, it was me. I was watching my own apartment from a high angle, like there was a camera in the corner of my ceiling. I shot up so fast I nearly fell over. My eyes darted to the corners of the room, searching for a camera, a lens, anything. But there was nothing. And then on the screen I saw it. Behind me, a shape, no sound, no movement, just standing there in the shadows near my kitchen, watching me. I spun around, knife raised, nothing. The corner was empty, but when I turned back to the screen, the thing was closer. Its shape was wrong, blurry, shifting, like it wasn't fully in this reality. I slammed the laptop shut. My breathing was wild now, my chest tight. I needed to get out. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and bolted for the door. The hallway was still empty, eerily quiet. I didn't take the elevator. I sprinted down the stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping over myself in my panic. I hit the lobby. The night clerk at the desk looked up, startled. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. I ignored him. I needed to be outside. I pushed through the front doors into the cold night air. The street was still empty, the flickering streetlights making everything feel even more surreal. But the second I turned the corner, I froze. Because across the street, standing in the same spot as before, was the figure. But this time I could see its eyes, not black, not hollow, glowing, that same sickly green from the video. And the second I made eye contact, it twitched, a frame skip, a glitch in reality. 1 second it was across the street, the next it was at the edge of the sidewalk, closer. I ran. I don't even remember making the decision. My body just moved. I sprinted down the street, heart slamming against my ribs, not daring to look back. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed to get away. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually I ducked into an all-night diner, the bright fluorescent lights feeling like the safest thing in the world. I collapsed into a booth, panting, my hands still shaking. A waitress came over, eyeing me with concern. "Rough night?" she asked. I forced a nod. I just needed a minute, just needed to think. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't want to look, but when I did, it was another message. No caller ID. "Running won't help." I dropped the phone. My hands were ice cold. And then the bell above the diner door chimed. I didn't have to turn around to know. It found me. The dark web files proof of a hidden alien race among us. It all started on a late Friday night, as most bad decisions tend to. I had just finished up my work for the week and found myself aimlessly scrolling through Reddit, bored out of my mind. I'd read pretty much everything on my usual subreddits, so I started exploring new corners of the internet, places I'd usually avoid. Now, I've heard all the warnings about the dark web, how it's not a place for the faint-hearted or for people who like sleeping soundly at night, but curiosity has a funny way of working on you, doesn't it? I don't know what exactly pushed me to open that Tor browser. Maybe it was the allure of the forbidden, or maybe it was the adrenaline, the knowledge that I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. I can't really explain it. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The first site I landed on looked like something out of a horror movie. No fancy graphics, just text in a dull, dark green color. It was titled Dark Web Archives Hidden Truths. It looked fake. The kind of place where you'd expect to find something like free money. Just click here. But something about it didn't sit right with me. It felt wrong. The kind of wrong that makes your spine tingle. And that's when I found it. A file titled Proof of a Hidden Alien Race Among Us. I don't know what made me click on it. Maybe I thought it was a prank, or just some absurd conspiracy theory. But curiosity won. The file downloaded within seconds. At first, I thought it was just going to be a collection of grainy photos or some poorly edited video, like those fake alien documentaries. But no, this was something different. I opened the file. What I saw didn't feel like it was meant for the public. It was a video, grainy, almost static-filled, but clear enough to make out what was happening. The video started with shaky footage, moving through what looked like some sort of research facility. It was dimly lit industrial, something out of a government lab, or at least that's what I thought. The camera moved quickly, almost like whoever was filming was in a hurry. Then it stopped. The camera zoomed in on a large metallic door. It had a symbol on it that I couldn't recognize, something like a spiral. But it wasn't normal. It was warped, like the symbol itself was alive. I remember thinking, what the hell is this? The door opened, and what I saw made my blood run cold. On the other side of the door, in a dark, cold room, were two beings. They weren't human. Their skin was a pale, almost translucent grey, their eyes huge, black, and far too deep to be real. They didn't blink, They just stared into the camera, unblinking, like they knew exactly who was watching. My heart started pounding in my chest. I felt a rush of anxiety, like I had just stumbled upon something that I wasn't supposed to see. The video cut to another clip. This time, it showed several people in lab coats talking in hushed voices. Their words were clipped, urgent. I couldn't make out everything, but the conversation was about the aliens, or whatever those things were. They were being studied. There was a mention of experiments and containment protocols. The chilling part? They weren't just observing these beings, they were testing them. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but the feeling in my gut was telling me that this wasn't some weird hoax. This was real. Then the video cut to a screen. The camera was pointed at a large monitor, displaying a bunch of technical data I didn't understand. But one thing caught my attention, a time stamp. It was a date that was far too recent to be a relic of some old government conspiracy. It was from just 2 weeks ago. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just some random file I stumbled upon. This wasn't just a bunch of creepy footage. This was something someone wanted me to find. I shut my laptop off, my hands trembling. But the image of those eyes, those black, unblinking eyes, stayed burned into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching me. I tried to forget about it. I tried to convince myself it was just some elaborate fake. But as I lay in bed that night, I kept seeing flashes of those beings in my mind. It was like they had followed me. I didn't sleep. The next day, I found myself staring at my laptop again. I should have just deleted the file and forgotten about it, but something was pulling me back. I had to know more. So I opened the file again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a message. Do you want to know the truth? It wasn't a normal file, it wasn't a random pop-up. It felt intentional, like it was meant to find me. And in that moment I realized I wasn't just looking at random conspiracy nonsense. I had opened a door that once opened couldn't be closed. I had to know. The message stared at me from my screen like a warning. It wasn't an accidental pop-up or some spammy nonsense. This felt deliberate, like it was calling me into something I wasn't supposed to see. Do you want to know the truth? I couldn't stop staring at it. I know I should have closed the laptop, shut everything down and walked away. But something in the back of my mind, something darker, kept pushing me forward. I could feel my heartbeat quickening. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as if they were compelled to type something to answer that question. So I did. I typed a single word, yes. The second I hit send, the screen flickered. It wasn't just a regular flicker. It was like the image rippled, as though the very code was being warped. My eyes widened, but I couldn't pull away. A new file appeared. It wasn't labeled, no description, just a link. My heart pounded as I clicked it. This time, the video didn't open immediately. Instead, a message popped up. "We're watching. You shouldn't have opened this file." My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to turn off the laptop, but I couldn't. My fingers were glued to the keys. A part of me, deep down, wanted to see what came next. What was so important that someone would go through all this trouble to get it to me? Finally, the video loaded. It started with a dark room. No light, nothing but shadows. Then a loud metallic sound echoed through the space. The camera, steady, unnervingly calm, shifted to reveal something that made my stomach drop. It was a room, but not like any I'd ever seen. The walls were lined with metallic panels, and the ceiling was high, too high. The kind of high you only see in places like underground bunkers or military facilities. There were large steel doors that looked like they could lock from the outside, containment chambers. The camera zoomed in on one of the doors, and then I heard something, a soft click. It sounded like the door was being unlocked. The camera moved closer, and when it swung open, I saw them. The beings from before, the ones with the strange skin, the massive black eyes. But this time, they weren't just standing there, they were moving, slowly, as if they were testing their surroundings. The light was dim, but you could see their shape, their unnatural form. They weren't entirely humanoid, at least not in the way we understand. Their arms were too long, their fingers too thin. Their limbs moved with a disjointed mechanical quality, like they weren't entirely comfortable in their own skin. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. And then it spoke, not with a voice, but with a sound. It was like words, but not words. A humming vibration that rattled the bones in my body. I felt my head spin, my vision blurred. The screen went black. I stared at it for a few moments before I forced myself to blink, to take a breath. What was that? What was happening? And then a new message appeared. They found you. Do not trust what you see. I wasn't sure what that meant. It didn't make sense. Who was they? The silence in the room felt suffocating. I wanted to close everything and forget about it. I tried to convince myself this was all some sick joke, but there was a gnawing feeling in my chest, like I was being pulled into something far deeper than I was prepared for. I looked at my phone. I hadn't checked it in a while, but when I picked it up, I saw several missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. A new text. It was from an unknown contact. The message read, "If you don't stop now, you'll regret it. They know you're looking." I didn't know what to do. I wasn't even sure if I was dreaming. Could this be real? How could something like this be happening? I tried calling the number back, but it went straight to voicemail. My hands were shaking. My thoughts scrambled. I went back to the file. I had to. I couldn't stop myself. But this time, when I opened the video, the screen didn't flicker to life like before. It stayed dark, silent. And then a face appeared. It was close, so close it filled the entire screen. It was distorted, like a glitch had corrupted the image, but for a second I could make out the face of one of the beings, those huge black eyes staring directly into the camera. It wasn't the same footage. This was different. This wasn't some old government video. This was live. Before I could process what I was seeing, the being's mouth opened, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. Too many teeth. It smiled, and for the briefest moment, I could swear it was looking at me. I didn't move. I couldn't. The smile stretched wider. It's too late. The video cut to black again. I didn't understand. I shouldn't have been able to see any of this. Why was I chosen? Why me? I didn't want to keep going, but I had to. My curiosity had already pushed me too far. There was something buried here, something buried so deep in this mess that it was impossible to walk away. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were already aware of me. And worse, they were getting closer. I couldn't sleep. I spent the next few days in a daze, my mind consumed by what I'd seen. Every time I closed my eyes, those black eyes, that jagged smile, flashed in front of me. Every noise in my apartment made my heart race. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, even the distant sounds of cars on the street. It was all amplified, like I was waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. For a while, I thought I had imagined it all. The messages, the videos, it all seemed so insane. Maybe it was just a weird internet hoax, one of those elaborate pranks people pull on each other. But then something happened that made me realize this wasn't some sick joke. It was a Tuesday. I had just finished a meeting for work and was heading back to my apartment when I got a text. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated, but curiosity won. "You shouldn't have watched that." I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. The voice in my head screamed at me to delete the message, block the number, and forget this entire mess. But I couldn't. I opened the message. "They're coming for you. You've seen too much." I looked around the apartment, suddenly feeling like I wasn't alone. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. I could hear the faint hum of the lights overhead, but it was like the room had gone completely silent. I stared at the text for too long, too afraid to move. Then another message came through. "Delete everything now. If you don't, it will be too late." I should have listened. I know that now, but the dread gnawing at my insides told me to keep reading, to keep going. I couldn't explain it, this strange, sick fascination that pulled me deeper into whatever I had stumbled into. I opened my laptop, fingers shaking as I clicked on the file again. I should have been smart enough to stay away, but I needed to understand. The video didn't load immediately. The screen stayed black for longer than usual, and just as I was about to click away, it flickered to life. But this time, it wasn't the grainy footage from before. This was clearer, sharper, as if whoever was behind this was getting bolder. A man appeared on the screen, his face haggard and disheveled. He was sitting in what looked like a small room, with a dim light overhead. His eyes were wild, darting nervously. The tension in his body was palpable. He didn't speak at first. His hands shook as he wiped his brow. Then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, he spoke. "They've been watching. They've always been watching." He paused, his breath shallow. I could hear the distant sound of something moving in the background. Something large, something heavy. I leaned forward, my fingers digging into the desk as I watched him, frozen in place. He continued. "You don't understand what you've found. The truth is far worse than you can imagine. They've been here for decades, not just observing us, they're taking us." The man looked over his shoulder, his eyes wide with panic. "You need to stop. Right now. Delete everything and never speak of this again. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room. The man jumped and the camera shook as if he was backing away from something. The screen flickered again, this time turning into a jumbled mess of static. I could still hear his voice, muffled, desperate. "They're here! They're here!" Then the screen cut to black. I sat there, staring at the empty screen, my heart racing. I felt like I had just witnessed someone's last moments. My hands were clammy as I wiped sweat from my forehead. I wanted to turn the laptop off, shut it all down, but something inside me told me I had to finish this. I had to know what was really happening. And so I did something I shouldn't have. I opened the file again, but this time there was no video, only a document. The file opened to reveal rows of coordinates, latitude and longitude, along with strange cryptic descriptions. Containment Area 12, the extraction zone, quarantine site 45B. At first I didn't understand, but as I scanned the document, something clicked. These weren't just random locations. They were points all over the world, scattered across the most remote places, mountains, deserts, deep in forests. But one stood out to me. Site 1, Antarctica. I felt my stomach twist. I remembered the file title from when I first opened it. Proof of a hidden alien race among us. Was this what they were talking about? What had the man been trying to warn me about? Was this the reason the government wanted to keep these things hidden? I couldn't help but feel like the walls were closing in. Like something was watching me too. My phone buzzed on the desk. Another text. "Stop looking. Stop. Before it's too late." It was from the same unknown number. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know who was behind this. I tried calling the number. It rang once, twice. Then the voicemail kicked in. But instead of a message, all I heard was breathing. That slow, laboured breathing. And then, just before the beep, I heard a whisper. "They're coming for you next." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not with what I'd seen, not with the feeling that they were getting closer. I left my apartment, walking out into the cold, my mind spinning. What had I uncovered? What did it all mean? But the worst part was the overwhelming feeling that wherever I went, they would be waiting for me. I didn't feel safe anywhere. The sense of being watched, hunted even, had never left me. It was like a weight in my chest that only grew heavier with each passing moment. I didn't know who was after me. Was it them? The government? The things I had seen on the screen? I had no idea. I had tried to leave my apartment to get away, but it didn't matter. I was already too deep into this. The strange phone calls kept coming. Each time, I would hear that heavy breathing before the voice whispered those same chilling words. "They're coming for you." And then, just as quickly as the call started, it would cut off. I tried blocking the number, but the calls kept coming from different ones. I started feeling like I was being surrounded on all sides. There was no escape. I went to a cafe the next morning, trying to gather my thoughts. I needed to think, to figure out what to do next. The cafe was packed, full of the usual morning crowd, people lost in their own worlds with their lattes and croissants. But for some reason, I felt completely out of place. I felt like I was on the edge of something terrifying. I sat by the window, my phone screen dark, the laptop shut tight in my bag. I couldn't bring myself to open it again. Every time I did, I felt that terrible pull, the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something was waiting for me. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me, tracking me. I had learned to look over my shoulder, to be aware of my surroundings. But I still couldn't shake the fear. It was always there. When I left the cafe, I noticed something odd. A black van was parked across the street. It wasn't unusual to see cars idling on a busy street, but there was something about this one. The windows were tinted, and the engine idled quietly, almost like it was waiting for something, or someone. My stomach twisted. I quickly turned and walked down the sidewalk, keeping my head down, trying to act as normal as I could. But I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. The van had started to follow me. My pulse quickened as I ducked into a narrow alley, my breath coming faster. I walked quickly, then jogged, trying to outrun the feeling of being hunted. I didn't know why it felt like this, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let them catch me. I couldn't let them find out I had seen what I saw. I glanced behind me, and the van had followed me into the alley. It was moving slower now, crawling forward as if it was waiting for the right moment. I felt like a rabbit with a predator closing in. I didn't stop to think. I bolted. I ran as fast as I could, weaving through side streets and alleyways, heart pounding in my ears. The sound of my sneakers hitting the pavement was the only thing I could hear, but in my gut, I could feel the van's presence behind me. I didn't stop running. Not when I turned another corner, not when I darted down a narrow street and past a row of stores. And then I heard it. The screech of tires, a revving engine. It was closer now. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The terror gripping me made it hard to breathe, but somehow I pushed my legs harder. I had to lose them. Finally, I saw a crowd of people up ahead. I could blend in there. They wouldn't follow me into the crowd. I was almost there when a car engine roared behind me and I heard the screech of brakes. The van was there. It was directly behind me. I made one last desperate dash, diving into the crowd. I heard shouting from behind, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept running, trying to lose them in the maze of city streets. Somehow, I made it. I ducked into a corner shop, my body trembling from the adrenaline. I leaned against the wall, breathless, my chest heaving. I peered out of the store window, watching the crowd as my hands shook. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, but then I saw something that made my blood run cold. The black van had stopped at the corner. The engine was still running, but it wasn't moving. And then, just as I thought I was safe, I saw them. 2 men were standing next to the van. They weren't dressed like police officers, but they looked official, too clean, too sharp. And one of them was holding something, a tablet. They were staring directly at the store. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. They knew where I was. It was happening again. They were closing in. I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't go back to my apartment. There was nowhere to hide. I had gone too far. I had seen things that weren't meant for the public. The government, or whoever they were, didn't want me to know the truth. And now they were after me. I backed away from the window, my head spinning, panic surging through me. I had to leave. I had to disappear. I don't know how long I stood there trying to collect myself, but eventually the men got into the van and drove off, the engine's sound fading as they turned the corner. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my things and left the store in a hurry, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that they would always be a step behind, always just out of sight, waiting for me to slip up. It felt like a nightmare that never ended, but it was real. The worst part, I wasn't sure I could trust anything anymore. Not the texts, not the videos, not even the people who were supposed to be protecting me. They were all part of it, and I was deep in their web. I thought I could outrun it. I was wrong. For the next few days, I did everything I could to stay hidden. I moved from place to place, staying in cheap motels, switching up my routes, changing my phone number, even cutting off my internet access. But no matter what I did, I could feel the pressure building, the weight of something chasing me, something always lurking in the shadows. I couldn't escape it. Everywhere I went, I felt the presence of the unknown. It was like being caught in a storm, waiting for the first bolt of lightning to strike. Every noise, every glance from a stranger felt like a warning. I was constantly on edge, my nerves stretched to their breaking point. And then, one night, I made a mistake. I walked into a new motel, a cheap place on the outskirts of the city. It looked like any other place I had stayed in over the past few weeks. Dark hallways, flickering lights, a stale, musty smell in the air. I checked in quickly, paying in cash, trying not to draw attention. I thought I was safe, but when I opened the door to my room, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The walls weren't bare. There was something on them, writings. In neat, precise handwriting, someone had written across the walls, "They're closer than you think. We know you found it." The words felt like a cold slap to my face. I froze in the doorway, my heart hammering in my chest. For a second I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just some prank, it wasn't a coincidence. This was them, the ones who had been tracking me all along. I ran back out of the room, almost tripping over my own feet. My brain was scrambling, telling me to get out, but my legs wouldn't move fast enough. I had been found. I didn't even go to the front desk. I just grabbed my bag, rushed out of the building, and back into the parking lot. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something else. A black van. It was parked near the entrance, just like the last time. But this time, I could see the silhouettes of people sitting inside, watching me. They weren't even trying to hide. They knew. I ran. This time it was different. I didn't care if they were watching me. I didn't care if they were right behind me. I had to get away. I had to find a way to stop this, to stop them. I didn't know how long I had been running. I lost track of time, weaving through streets, trying to lose them in the maze of the city. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were always just a step behind. Then when I reached a narrow alley, I heard it again. The voice, the same whisper from those phone calls. It was like it was in my ear, but there was no one there. "We know everything. It's too late for you." I spun around, but no one was there. My heart was pounding so loudly in my ears that I could barely hear anything else. I was dizzy, lightheaded, feeling like I was on the edge of losing my mind. That's when I saw it. In the alleyway, there was a door. It wasn't much, just an old, rusted metal door tucked into a corner, hidden in plain sight. Something about it drew me in. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was instinct, but I felt compelled to go toward it. I reached out, my hand trembling as I grabbed the handle and twisted. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. I stepped inside. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, the air seemed to change. It was cold, heavier. And the silence, it was deafening. I moved deeper into the hallway, my feet shuffling on the concrete floor. It was hard to see anything in the dim light, but I could feel something was off. The walls were lined with old, rusted pipes, and the air smelled stale, like a place that hadn't been touched in years. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, there was another door. This one, though, was different. It was much newer, reinforced with metal and security locks. The kind of door you would see at a high-security facility. My heart started to race again. I knew what was behind that door. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't just some random warehouse. This was it. This was where the government had been hiding the truth. I took a deep breath and approached the door. My hand hovered over the handle. And then, just as I was about to turn it, I heard something behind me. Footsteps, quick, fast, and getting closer. I spun around, but there was no one there. But I heard the voice again. This time, it was clearer, almost in my head. "You should have never opened the door. They've been waiting for you." I didn't waste another second. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room was vast. It stretched for what felt like miles, filled with strange machinery I couldn't even begin to comprehend. There were screens on the walls, monitors that flickered with static. But the most disturbing part was what I saw in the center of the room. A pod. It was sleek, metallic, almost otherworldly. Inside the pod I could see something moving. It was too dark to make out clearly, but I could see the outline of something inside, something alive. I stepped forward, drawn to it, my body moving before I could stop it. And that's when I saw it, the alien face, illuminated just enough by the dim light. It wasn't human, but it was close. Its skin was a pale, translucent grey, and its eyes, those eyes, were the same black voids I'd seen on the video. It was watching me. Before I could react, the door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered, and I heard a hum, low, mechanical, vibrating through my body. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to make it out of here.